Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Frivolous Gravitas. This week, we will be talking about awareness. And that is the issue of getting the word out. So, raising awareness for things like cancer, your health, political awareness of issues that are dear and near and dear to all of our hearts, whether it be, a lack of water or a bridge to certain reserves that may desperately need it, or disaster relief in areas hit by fire or flood, or even the need for a new community center in your local in your neighborhood, or the need for rink renovations in your small town. Now, if you're in Canada, this is actually very important, but for all our non-Canadian viewers, so we're going to be talking about raising awareness, specifically when it's appropriate, when it's not, and when is it just news, or when is it just a commercial, or when is it actually, something that we need to know about. I think we'll start with Chris, but I think one thing that we could start with is seeing as how awareness is just kind of getting information to people. It might be interesting to look back a bit, but
well, before you get started, if I may.
Sorry.
Just for the introductions or whatever, in case you're new to the channel, this is Christopher Driver, and with me here is my delightful co-host, Jordan Roy.
Still a bit loopy, so bear with me.
We're actually both a bit loopy today, so it's going to be a loopy episode. Mm-hmm. But maybe you could start us off with some of the history of types or mediums of purveying information that sort of made raising awareness even feasible to begin with, namely the printing press and distributing written materials.
Well, even before the printing press, a lot of information was what people and authorities, that the local authorities, so the nobility, the priests, or the
town crier.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. So you eventually get a town crier, because you get a which actually was what I was going to get to. Reading my mind.
Sorry. It's almost like I knew what the show was about before.
We don't need awareness if we can read each other's minds. So we you can't really, the king's not going to go out and make a speech every single time something happens. So he sends out someone to cry the word out of the local news. Your glorious king has gone and slain many in the Holy Land and is now bringing honor and coming back to, blah, 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 blah. Or a pox has been seen in the local village. Do not see anyone from there.
Or our favorite, taxes are increasing.
Yes. Well, sometimes that's just a knock at the door from the tax collector going, guess what? Surprise. And then tea gets thrown in the harbor.
And then Robin Hood becomes a sensation.
Yeah. Funny that. I think one of the best examples of this sort of thing is if you watch the TV series Rome from way back when, there's that guy.
He's a fantastic series.
He's just in the thing and he's doing the oration, and that was very specific, like rhetorical gestures that they were doing. But that's essentially what would have been done, and then you would have had behind him, you could actually see the calendar of the city, which was also a way of getting information out. And this was pretty much the way of getting the news out. And then you also had word of mouth. You had the grapevine, which is still in existence. It'll never die. And this was one of the main ways of getting it out. The other way, of course, was kind of a speaker's corner thing. So you grab a box, you stand up, and you just start yelling, I think this, rah, 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 rah. And most of these people are just kind of, people that just need to yell and talk. But sometimes you get someone, there's a couple of these in the Bible, I think, for our religious viewers, just put in the comments if you recognize this, where they just start preaching. Even here in Edmonton, if you go on White Ave, every once in a while, there's some Christians preaching fire and brimstone, which kind of misses the point of Christianity.
You get those downtown Winnipeg here too.
Yeah, you will all die, and they're really nice, but then what they're telling you about is all evil. In London, I believe there's a park there where it's like traditional, that's where the place where you do that. and people will go out and do YouTube-esque stuff like what we're doing right now out in public. They grab your soapbox and you go and say stuff. And so a lot of this happened in the political sphere too, where you just go out and you raise awareness of your party's political thing. Famously, you get people like certain Schmidtlers who would go to a pub or a coffee house, and they just every night they'd hold a rally to convince the local people. This wasn't always useful because sometimes the local people were already drunk. Sometimes the piano would be playing over them. Sometimes people would be talking over them. Sometimes, a lot of times, nobody listens. So you kind of have to have some oomph that gets people to pay attention to you, saying what they want to hear, kind of stuff too.
The theatrics of it to get people engaged, that kind of
thing. So the British knee is the finest knee. Watch Jeeves and Wooster. There's a good Hitler parody in that show. It's just, anyway. So this still happens, but there's in the late Middle Ages and the Renaissance, there was an invention that kind of threw all this out the window, and that was the Gutenberg press. The first thing they obviously printed with it was a Bible, but eventually once people saw it and were like, well, of course that's something that we can all just make. It just made sense. You put a typeface, you just stamp it down with ink, and then all of a sudden you can just stamp as much ink and paper as you have. That's it. That's all. And so people started investing in these, and as it became more and more common, you get people throwing pamphlets out, and these pamphlets became a huge method of raising awareness on every single asinine issue in the early modern period. Exactly in the same way that YouTube is right now. People like us, who, you'd have a little Frivolous Gravitas pamphlet, and we'd be like, here's what I think, and then we'd be putting it out, and then we'd like hand it out in bars and stuff, or we'd spread it out, or we'd have give it to all our friends and stuff. And a lot of times these would, the nobility and the upper classes didn't really understand what was going on, so they'd squash them. There wasn't really much free speech, but this was something that you couldn't really control. It's a piece of paper, and you can pass it to someone and nobody's looking, then all of a sudden they have been made aware of something of information that they wouldn't have had to begin with. Now, this is one element of awareness, knowing something that you're not supposed to know. But now it's assumed kind of that it's not that you're not supposed to know it, it's that you don't know it because you just haven't seen it yet. So we'll probably get into that a bit later. Now, this was pretty much the norm, as you can say, oh, well, we got typewriters and, all this stuff, and then we had printers and stuff like that. But that was all pretty much the same thing. You're just elaborations on the pamphlet. A book is still just a big old pamphlet, even though it's a codex instead of a leaf. But and so once you democratize the written word, it becomes a lot harder to control your populace, and they all of a sudden want things like rights, free speech,
and then they want to be heard too. So now they have opinions on things that they want to project.
Yeah, they want things like food. And if you put a pamphlet out, you can raise awareness of stuff like the peasants are very, very hungry. And then, the king's like, oh, well, don't worry about it. And it's like, no, you don't understand. They are very hungry and therefore very angry. Pamphlet.
You can hear them.
And then they're like, okay, yeah, well, let them eat cake. Well, you better listen, because, they're trying to raise awareness. But this was pretty much, so this brought a lot of positive social change over a long period of time. And you can see it as one of the main causes of progress in society. But that's getting completely off track. Now, as we get closer to the present day, you get things like television, where, motion pictures. You have pictures that are democratized now, that come out to everybody. And for a long time, it was really bad. Very, very bad, because a lot of times think Good Night and Good Luck with Moreau, where they just assumed the populace was foolish, so they created a lot of 40 years of just really bad television that just didn't take their audience's intelligence seriously. And but now we know that we can inform people, we can let them think. So with the digital coming around, all of a sudden everyone has a say. Everyone wants to try and be as smart as possible. But the thing is that everyone has an issue. So the word and the spoken word and the written word and the picture are now completely democratized. We can get all this information out as easily as you can upload it. Like before, to get this out, we would have needed a TV station and then rights and then
big ass antennas.
We need to like go on our knees to the CRTC, and maybe they'd give us a second thought. But now we can just put it up. And so we can raise awareness to anyone that's willing to give us a click and not mute us. That's it. Now, you couldn't mute a town crier, but now we're all competing for attention. So we all have our little issues that we want to raise awareness of. But the problem is, a lot of that is not worth talking about. So we talked earlier before in our preamble that we didn't record. There's a couple things that we keep seeing that that everyone's kind of trying to raise awareness for now. Everyone wants to have their little interest be the most important thing that they're portraying over these mediums. And we see these a lot. You get ones like health with cancer, political causes. What other kind? I don't know. Sorry. I feel like there's a couple others.
We'll get into that after. I think maybe to start off, we'll just discuss like what we're talking about by raising awareness. So
go. What do you mean?
We're not just speaking strictly of like medical causes or political things. Like any type of raising awareness sort of counts. So the obvious low-lying fruit that we'll pluck is like funding. Anytime you need funding, you need to tell people with money that they should donate some of their money towards something that's worthwhile and a just cause. For health conditions, for specific things like that require screening or treatment for which there are things available, or like raising awareness for a vaccine that we can verifiably prove works and is useful and beneficial to humanity. Those types of raising awareness sort of is what most people think. I know I do. Is the first thing I think of when I hear raising awareness. But there are all kinds of subtle ways we do it too, in the way like we socialize children by making them aware that elderly people are frail and can be knocked over if you push them.
Don't play in traffic.
Don't play in traffic. Heavy vehicles can kill you. They don't always see you because you're small. There's the raising awareness though, of like people's feelings and in the gender debates and the identity politics that's really prevalent in today's politisphere, which is unfortunate, but also necessary, but not to the degree that they're going.
It wasn't so contradictory. It's like, you need to feel like this. Okay, you need to feel like this. It's like, wait, no, hold on. I'm just going to be polite.
So there's all kinds of raising awareness, and that includes even in literature and opinion pieces we read and articles that are about things that's, completely as innocuous as like changing the rules of a sport. For everybody watching the sport to understand what's going on when the rules change, you need to raise awareness for it. And that type of raising awareness makes the game more fun to everybody watching because they're not confused. Like the funniest thing is watching the Olympics and you hear like the commentators not know the rules to the sport that they're commentating on.
We're wondering why it's like, come on, that was icing. And it's like, wait, no, there's a line, there's a change. It's like, but all right, fine.
Or the NBCSN when they report on the Premier League, it's just so funny because they don't seem to recognize offside, and they're always shocked when the ref blows the whistle and they have no idea why. Oh, maybe there was a foul upfield. Oh, offside. Oh, okay. It's like everybody watching it knows what the rules are. So that type of raising awareness is important too, so that everybody's on the same page when we're all working together at achieving a goal, but also when we're all working together at just having entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
It's all part and parcel.
We're all on the same page.
Yeah.
But it kind of get a bit annoying. Like sometimes you get like too much awareness. Like, get the vaccine. It's like, okay, I'll get the vaccine. There's a vaccine. I know. I'm going to get it right now. Go. Have you got it yet? It's like, yeah, I'm getting it right now. It's like, well, you need to get your vaccine. I'm fully vaccinated. Have you gotten vaccinated? It's like, could you shut up? Everyone knows about the vaccine.
Yeah. and then there's like,
don't tell me that it is a vaccine. Just lead me to get it when I don't.
Yeah. And from then they even go further overboard sometimes, and people who absolutely refuse, and you're just wasting your breath, but then they turn to like violence and bigotry and bullying and all these like offensive things. Like they went from a subtle nudge of encouragement to starting to abuse people outright. And it's just like, you crossed the line there.
Yeah.
Your cause isn't greater than personal sovereignty. I'm sorry. You can't just violate the constitutional or charter of rights just because you think that you have a just cause, because that's not, raising awareness isn't more important than people's freedom.
No. Well, then you get stuff like the Cancer Society too, who raise awareness, but it's kind of dubious as to whether or not they're using their funds properly. But you can't argue. It's like, do you hate people with cancer? It's like, no.
Well, that was like with the Human Rights Museum, when people objected to the things that were being put on display, they turned it into a big racist thing, and then they started raising awareness for how racist people are for not wanting a display up.
Yeah, that was.
And they're like, no, it's a human rights museum. It should be like distributed amongst all human cultures, not just one specific culture and their rights.
Museum has a collection. It's not a museum; it's a gallery.
Yeah.
That's just from a record keeping public
as an
history
archivist.
Yeah.
But so I think that's what we wanted to talk about today too, is like, it's not just the obvious type that we first think of when we think of raising awareness, but it's like the public communication in general.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the PR that we do for everything that is related to other people that requires communication. All of that requires raising awareness. But I think where it irks me most is in the nonsense of it, when people have lost sight of their objectives, or they never set out their objectives to begin with. That's even more infuriating to me, because they want the pat on the back and the social credit for being party to the remediation of whatever problem it is that they believe exists. But they don't want to put one iota of thought into how their actions are going about affecting that outcome or that resolution.
Well, it's like changing your Facebook profile picture, instead of like actually grabbing a couple people with concrete and actually going out and building a road to that reserve in spite of the government's regulations so people can get there. Mm-hmm. Like, it's easy to say we should help, but actually grabbing a bucket and a shovel to go help, that's different.
Or like those gardens in the inner city. I see so many people walk by them not wanting to feed the poor, and those same people will go to work saying that we should feed the poor. Like, why don't you just like, you don't have to water all of them, just water one, pick one and say, I got this one. If everybody did that and they walked by it every day, they wouldn't need to pay garden tenders or whatever they call them. Well, the parks department.
That actually underlies a more complicated, because a lot of these awareness campaigns they don't show the complexity of a lot of these problems. So like, we need to feed the poor. Well, yeah, people that don't eat, we should be eating, because we shouldn't be leaving people to die. Just basic human like decency there. But people would, I remember when I was working in Winnipeg serving, one thing I noticed is that a lot of the poor people were being given meals, and because they would hang out in front of the restaurant and they'd be like, hey man, can you get me some food? I want some food. And I'm like, and so every once in a while, a couple times a week, someone would buy one of these homeless people a meal. One thing I always noticed though, and I would just serve them because, they're taking up a table, I might as well do my job. And one thing I noticed though is that they never finished their food. And I found that very strange. Cause like I remember like I was hungry at that time. I remember being like, eat every rice grain in the pot kind of hungry. Because I was spending all my money on tuition and rent and stuff like that. So like that's where I was. I was just like extra condiments at the at the restaurant that my family's taking me to because I need those calories. So that was me. And that was my conception of what it was to be hungry and homeless. And so I didn't understand why they get some soup and they get some stuff. They don't take all the crackers they can and stuff them into their face. And that, to me, I'm not going to make a judgment on that, but like kind of like you are more appreciative of the things that you earn, blah blah blah. That's not the point. The point is that it belied a lot more complexity than we just need to put food in front of these mouths. And that I think awareness misses because it's on TV, 30-second segment of help the homeless in your, blah, blah, blah. And it's all really nice. None of the people involved have probably seen a homeless person in the last week. And they know it's on primetime TV being viewed by people who probably haven't seen homeless people in the last month. And everyone thinks, oh, we need to get more food to these people. It's like, yeah, we do. But there are people working on that and they know the issues. But they're too busy actually helping to raise awareness. You get the missions and the halfway houses, the shelters. These things there's a lot of people working really hard, but it's the same with cancer. Like we need more money for cancer. It's like the funding in that itself is a very complicated, and the awareness campaigns of it do nothing to show you how that money is going and what's happening behind that. And
I think you touched on a really good point there too with the media, because I find there's a lot of wastage in raising awareness in the sense that nobody's unaware of homelessness. They might be unaware of the severity of the problem, the scope of the problem, the complexity of the problem, but none of the commercials address the scope or the complexity or the scale.
Yeah,
they only say, hey, did you know there are homeless people that we should help? And everybody's like, yeah, I already knew that. They don't actually accomplish their goal for the tens of thousands of dollars of donation money that they're spending on a commercial to promote awareness.
Well, what do they expect? Because you think of like the story of Buddha, right? Where he's the first time he sees a sickness and age and death because he hasn't left the palace in forever. Right. And so he leaves the palace and he's like, what the heck is that? And it's like, oh, people die. And he's just like, what? Oh, yeah. And they suffer the entire time they're dying and he can't handle it. So it changes him. And that's, I think, what they expect. But I don't know what they expect beyond that other than guilt.
But it's weird to me that they all do it. It's not just like, the food bank does it or Canada Harvest or something like that. Like Canada Harvest shows commercials with the volunteers in the commercial. Well, they might be actors, but they're showing people that are, stocking warehouses full of canned goods and stuff like that, right? But that to me, not that I do marketing professionally or anything, but it looks like they've got fully stocked warehouses full of food. It's not encouraging me to donate. Do you know what I mean? Like their objectives are skewed from the things that they're projecting out into the world. And then they'll go on the news and they'll have the news report and say Canada Harvest is really short of food this year.
Or Winnipeg Harvest.
But the commercials all show them with stocked warehouses and forklifts.
But like if you show like I've worked with homeless at certain points before. If you show them some of those things, that the reality of it, the network would take that thing and be like, I'm not putting this on air. I need something family friendly. I need something happy and go lucky. I need you to make this at once happy. And then they try and shock you and everyone's like, okay, that looks horrifying indeed, with your family being, we need more money for Winnipeg Harvest. You can win, $10,000. It's like, That $10,000 seems like it would be put to really good use serving the homeless people, or like.
And that's the flip side of it too, though. They'll do the exact opposite in other cases, where they'll try and sensationalize something that is actually indeed already terrible and cruel and horrible for people, and they'll try and blow it up to make it look like Hollywood, thinking that if they jerk people's tear strings, they'll get more of their objective, more money.
Well, that's the World Vision tactic, the
Right. With the
in
flies on their face, where they
eyes
wait, there's
of
flies
an
on these
angel.
kids' faces. Like, if all
Yeah.
you did was watch World Vision commercials, you'd swear that kids just had flies everywhere all the time when they walked around.
It's like, I don't want to go to Africa. It's just children just staring at you all the time. Like, it's
Yeah, just
like-
staring for no reason.
it's the creepiest continent.
Yeah. Meanwhile, whenever you see a
just
documentary
airdrop
of
some
people
food,
walking
so-
through with cameras, all the kids are flocking to them like, oh, a new person. Like, it's just
Yeah.
exciting to them.
Yeah, it's like, whoa, look at this white guy. I haven't seen a white guy in a year.
Yeah.
Can I
So
touch your
it's
skin?
the same problem exists, though, blowing things out of proportion and then also minimizing your own ethos or mission in the way that they portray or project, or in the sense of like the town crier, the way their theatrics go about describing the nature of the issue at hand. And I don't think either of those tactics are actually useful. You might be able to, with metrics, tell, hey, this commercial got me this influx of donations, and you'd be able to see, yeah, it helped. But in the long term, the grand scope of things and people's perceptions that they carry through the rest of their lives, if they keep seeing these types of false, I don't want to say they're false narratives, but they're misleading. They're intentionally misleading.
Yeah, I don't like using the postmodernist rhetoric. It's too much baggage. But you're right. It's, you have this.
There's a long-term harm that's caused by that type of desensitization, though.
Yeah, like, oh, there's poor people, and it's like, okay, but there's always poor people, and there's been poor people all my life. It's
They've been saying that for years.
Yeah, that's and well, and then you see, well, there's ways to deal with that. It's like, well, there are a lot of people being lifted out of poverty, and everyone assumes that, oh, there's a lot of people working on that, but that's the thing. There's other people working on that, and like, that's if it's always someone else doing it, then it ends up being no one's doing it, or a couple of like, what do you call them? Actual like true believers, those saints that, actually sit down and do the work. And everyone just assumes that that's the other guy. But if everyone assumes that's the other guy, then, it's only one guy doing it.
But they don't want to take credit for being part of it by doing the least amount possible.
Yeah.
By raising awareness for the cause that's raising awareness improperly for a cause that's genuine but not getting enough awareness, because people are dismissing it based on the way people are raising awareness for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It becomes counterproductive over time, even though in the immediacy of now, they do get more funding from commercials. The long-term problem with it, with people just assuming it's always there, like, oh, people are always going to be starving in Africa, or people are always going to be fighting in Israel. That's not true. Time has a way of changing things, and look at
Ireland.
To change
when was the last time like Ireland had combat with the British?
Yeah, and they had been stopped
like,
fighting.
They still
for
hate each other.
How many years?
Yeah, like that wasn't even that long ago, like at all. And
well, they just started rioting again because of the whole Brexit thing. But
yeah, but that's a riot. Like everyone's doing that now. It's
well, it might blow out into war though, because the Irish border is really contentious in that whole Brexit thing.
Yeah,
because they want to set up a Eurozone customs borders so that they can't like smuggle goods in through Ireland into Europe, like just some insane things.
We need to raise awareness about the poor Irish mafia that's being hurt by these unintentionally evil legislations. Okay, but anyway, I kind of let's come back to the desensitization and the dilution of the causes here, because one of the things that seems to me that all these causes and things have to do with them is that when you get up and you start talking, if you are talking with some gravitas, with some eloquence, then you have automatic authority. This is something you notice in class. That kid who gets up to the mic and starts talking, he's got authority. Oh, he's speaking, and that gives you enough authority for people to take you seriously. And so a lot of times, if you're on, so it's the same on like television. If you have like an ad on YouTube, people see it. And it's like, oh, it's an institution that's serious enough to have ads on YouTube. I could take out ads on YouTube. I could take out ads on YouTube being like, the color blue. Have you seen it lately? Go see the color blue at your local Sky. And it's like I could put anything on there. I could
That's not blue, it's green.
Yeah. So our culture. But and so this authority is something that's definitely abused. You get people like, and when it's not just that, you get up and speak and all of a sudden you're the one speaking, but you trap yourself in the aesthetic of competence. So you make yourself look, and so you get something like Cancer Society where they have like a logo that's designed and clean and tested, and then they have all these things. They have T-shirts and they have spokesmen. They have offices, but how much of that money actually goes to cancer research? Very little. But they look important. They seem important. They act important.
Well, it's things like that too, like the disabilities group organizations that are nonprofit, and they really are well intentioned, and these people really are trying to help disabled people. But if you go to their website, they spent a bunch of money on it, and nowhere can you change the text size. They've got text embedded into images, so if you have trouble seeing, I mean, good luck. You can't even get an e-reader or something to read it for you because it's not in text. They embedded it into the image. So like stuff like that, where they just didn't actually consider the people it's supposed to be helping. That website's supposed to be there to help connect disabled people to the resources they need, and it only works for people who aren't disabled. Like, and they paid for it. They could have just had some high school student do it, or somebody in university who needed a project to do for school. They could have just donated a free website that was just functional and legible and scalable with just plain text and links. But they decided to make it pretty so that the people who need it can't use it.
Well, it's like a modem I bought once, way back when you bought a modem. And it says, if you have trouble installing this, go to our website. And I was like, what? It's the same thing.
Yeah, Rogers. Oh, you're having trouble with your cell phone? Call us.
Yeah, it's like, oh, thanks. I'll go find a payphone. But it makes me think that they're actually not there to help them, and that they're there to, like, the website ends up being designed for the donations, the people who are interested in helping those with, say, dyslexia, and the website itself isn't actually designed for people with dyslexia. Or but you see something like I don't know, I remember Borderlands had a colorblind mode, and it actually changed all the colors so you could it would do that. And I was like, oh, that's pretty neat. They actually put some thought into their medium so that people could play with that.
So red wouldn't look like black, that kind of thing?
Yeah, it looks all weird to me because I'm not colorblind, but I don't know, it had different types of colorblindness, and it would change the color palette based on it. So
that's cool.
Yeah, it was really neat.
I applaud that, actually.
That was in Borderlands 2, I think. But yeah, I couldn't handle it. I turned it off after a while. I was just like, no.
But I still applaud the devs because that took effort. You know what I mean? I had to make a whole separate palette and then make sure that each one of those colors didn't blend into the one that would be put right beside it. Like, they all had to be differentiable. And even if it's imperfect, I mean, it's an attempt. That's the type of raising awareness that we should be raising awareness for. And yet I've never even heard of that.
Yeah. Well, I didn't even hear about it. I just found it in the in the options when I was tooling my graphics for it. I was just like, oh, that's neat. And yeah, I didn't find it. But to kind of move on from this a bit, so you all these things, you get that that dilution and that abuse of expert authority given by the crowd, and then you kind of put a lot of these two things together, and it seems like a lot of us are cynical about it. And you get like, well, how do we tell, as the general population, literally being us and our viewers, unless one of you works at a at a charity, in which case, please contact us. We will do a follow-up episode immediately.
Hey, shit, we'll even interview you.
That's what I mean.
You can raise awareness.
Yeah.
Like your cause.
We will do it. So how do we tell a real one versus one that makes money? And this is kind of that same argument. It's like, well, how do I know you're going to use my taxes right when we talk about voting and government and stuff like that? And like, we don't like paying taxes, but if we do have to, we'd rather pay them and have them go to something, cool instead of like vacations to Costa Rica or something. And
I think there are several ways you could do it. Sorry, are you asking me?
No, okay. I'm saying like as a general population, we can get to that. But I think there's a general distrust of these awareness causes. And you hear, well, like, we need to raise awareness about gun violence. It's like, okay, I know what guns are. I know what they're capable of. And I know that what they do when they do that is called violence. Well, we need to tell you how bad it is. It's like, I know what they're possible of. It's like, are you afraid of it? No. Well, I'd be afraid of it if I saw someone coming at me with one. But like right now, I'm pretty cool. It's like, and like are you afraid of cancer? It's like, you know what? Not really. Like I don't want it, but you have all these things. And okay, let me start making a list here. So we have guilt, which we brought up. We have fear, and on the other side we have help and actual awareness. Okay, so how do we tell what makes money and what's not? Now, sometimes you can't tell because, one thing that Cancer Society did actually helped. One thing that this did actually had results. I guess transparency would be, I'm guessing your answer would be transparency.
That would be part of it. I think that would be the easiest answer. But there are practical things that people can do in their everyday life if they actually want to, like if you're sincere about wanting to promote a cause, you could sit down with a pad and pen, literally 10 minutes, and start writing down what are the costs. So if we take the example of Manitoba Harvest or something like that, they've got cans of food. Each can of food is about $2, right? Well, they can't afford to buy all the cans of food, so maybe they can get like discount from like dollar stores or from a couple months before expiry when stores want to change over their inventory. So you can have deals where you get discount bulk items, things like that. So let's say you get them for $1 each instead of full retail value of $2 each. Then there's like the cost of, well, what if I pay Safeway or something, a grocery store, to have a bin there and encourage them to donate, for everybody to donate from as they're walking out of the store. So then you can do like a cost benefit analysis to it, right? And what you can do though, like if you hear a campaign to raise awareness for like prostate cancer or breast cancer or something like that, you can just take with a pad and pen, write down what are the costs associated with doing this. Mm-hmm. So for the individual, getting a cancer screening is free to them and it costs the government, but the government is paying highly skilled healthcare workers, which you want. So that's not really a wasted cost. That's justifiably a good cost because you're paying somebody a healthy living wage to effect medical services, which are known to be beneficial to the entire population as a whole. And it's cheaper to catch it early than late, so that's a no-brainer. So with the food thing, you might think, well, given a food bank's cost, how much does a commercial cost? How much does gas cost to have a truck? How much does a soup kitchen cost? If you were making everything from scratch and you had community gardens or schools donating everything. And just take a look at how much money is going into them and how much productivity is coming out of them. How many like vats of soup are being made. And right. if the organization is spending shitloads of money, raising money, and only issuing out a couple $100 in food, you've got an issue.
Yeah, and that's kind of like a lot of companies have to post like quarterly reports, especially if you're publicly traded, so that people can see what's going on. It's like, look, we're profitable, invest in us. Look how profitable we are, blah 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 blah. So they don't actually want to hide any of that shit. Mm-hmm. Unless they're doing something.
Tax write-off, so they're gonna inflate the amounts that they're giving.
That's the thing about those grocery stores that you mentioned, is that those are pretty much just tax write-offs. They take everything that they get from like, oh, would you like to donate to some I remember we were at Staples and they like to some, it was the most vaguely worded, inclusivity and moving forward, and it's just buzzwords, and I'm like, no. It's like, but they take that sum, they donate it, and then they use that donation from like Safeway or Staples or whatever, and that becomes a tax write-off. So they end up at whatever sum they have becomes a tax write-off on top of their normal taxes. So they're using that in order to not pay taxes. And I'm not giving charity to Safeway. I want to give charity. So like, give cans, don't give money.
Unless somebody's done a cost benefit analysis that says, hey, saving Safeway $1 million produces $10 million worth of food, then I'd be okay with it. But if they're not going to be transparent about that type of stuff.
No, I hate the lie.
Yeah. Like, you're better off driving down or taking a bus down to your food shelter and just handing them food.
Yeah, or there's those like those cloth bin, those like old clothes bins things. Those just go to Value Village, and Value Village is owned by Walmart. You're giving your clothes to Walmart so they can sell the clothes that you've already bought from them.
And they used to sell clothes that homeless people could afford with spare change, and now they don't. They sell $10 pants, $15, $20 shirts.
Yeah, it's literally an overstock. It's just
another store, but you're buying used stuff that the store didn't have to pay for. Like, what a great business model. We get free inventory and we charge people for it. Anybody could run that kind of a business. It's not a healthy economy. That's just taking from one person and then benefiting from it. That's exploitation, technically.
Yeah. And so a lot of this all just becomes white noise to me. Like, I just hear like, you need to know about like, like this, or like fetal alcohol syndrome, or all these acronyms that we're going to throw at you. And I look at Megan and I'm going like, which one's that? And she's just like, no, that's just MSG. I'm like, okay, wait, MSG needs awareness? I actually did see an MSG like is okay for you news article, and I was just like, I don't need to know that.
Brought to you by the People's Republic of China.
Yeah, it was a Chinese food. I think it was from Vancouver, but
Fort Rocal.
Yeah, and it's just and it just becomes white noise, and I stop caring, and I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna help that within arm's reach, and then I'm the bad guy all of a sudden. But I don't want to be the bad guy. None of us want to be the bad guy, except those
except for the evil people that do like goodwill just for the tax credits. Those people are like genuinely villains.
Yes, we should make a Disney villain about that. Maybe there already was one. But
because like the whole point, like that we're trying to like drill home into this episode here, I'll just say it point blank, is that the objectives matter. The objectives of the raising awareness campaign matters. If you're just raising awareness to make noise to show people or get a tax credit, you're not raising awareness for the cause. You're raising awareness for profit.
Well, the underlying thing of that is I completely everything he just said, I say that too, but you can count me into that. But intention. So objectives are supported by intention. And if you force people to push themselves into it, then like, I don't think that's right either. Like, you need to donate to this charity. And that's an abridgment of personal freedom. People should have to do it of their own choice. But then if it's just awareness and not charity, we have to, if we're looking at it objectively, see, does awareness have an objective benefit? Does the awareness actually contribute to a positive result on the issue? And so then if it does, then we could ask, okay, the ends justify the means. Doesn't matter what we do, doesn't matter what we say, as long as people are aware of it, it creates a good. This is Mill's utilitarianism. So it's like that bastardized, that evil version of utilitarianism, where it's like ends justify the means, which is not what Mill was talking about. But
But again, that sort of takes us back to our relative scopes episodes. If you're looking just at the immediate future after that one commercial was put out, and then you see the influx in donations and say, success, then sure, that's a success. But if you look at 10 years down the line when that person's disenfranchised from ever donating to anybody because they know they've been manipulated their whole lives into tearjerker commercials and stuff, it's going to water off a duck's back. And now you get no support for the rest of a lifetime. Like, where is the gain?
Right, because really I'm sitting here listening to the white noise, like Sport Check telling me to buy new sneakers has made me, like, in the most idiotic manner, people buy a new car, idiot, like over and over again. And I don't like anything on TV comes across to me as just like offensive, so if someone's like,
it's insulting. Yeah.
And so any commercial that comes on, no matter how well intentioned, is going to act as an insult to my intelligence. Therefore, like, I'm not like the awareness, like I'll be aware of it, but I won't like it. And so to my mind, it almost seems like you need to be careful with your awareness. You need to like tell me, and I think this is where you need to be able to say, okay, here's the issue. So it's almost like a freaking essay. Here's the issue. Here's what potential thing we're coming up with. So homelessness. I want to build a shelter. So we need nobody. Okay. So there's a new subdivision or something, but what we don't know is that the new subdivision created a homeless gap or something in between that subdivision and downtown. Nobody saw it coming. Like, we couldn't have planned for it. It's just, for some reason, there's a blind spot in policing or a blind spot in distribution. And all of a sudden there's a homeless slum right there. Couldn't have seen it coming. Okay, so there's a homeless problem in this area. We don't know about it yet because it's new, so we need awareness. But awareness is just letting people know there's a problem. If you have a leaky pipe, I've got a leaky pipe upstairs. If I am aware of it, I don't have to fix it. And so you come up with a result. Here's what I want to do. And then, here's what we need. So this is literally like a project pitch, and then times frame, blah, blah, blah. And then after it's implemented, you say, okay, awareness, we don't need awareness anymore, but here's what we did. Did it work or not? No, yes. Well, now do what we need, because, we're all fumbling around and we don't really know how to deal with these, which is why we need awareness for it, because maybe someone out there does. Because I tried something and it didn't work. I tried yelling at him. I've tried spitting at him. I've tried kicking him. Nothing's worked. And so you got to sell me on it a bit. Like, you're selling me on my attention, and you're selling me on my money and my action here. So,
and I think that's where transparency is helpful, because in order to sell it to people, like, realistically, they should show the problem as it is realistically. Like, for a city councilor or something to tackle a problem like homelessness, what they're going to start by doing is they're going to say, well, we need more tax revenue so that we can spend more money on homeless people. What's the easiest way to do that? Let's get incentives to real estate giants so that they develop new areas of our city and expand the tax base. Then you've got more wealthy people living in bigger houses, which get more property tax money. So by time you've doled out like subsidies to help these like poor real estate giants develop into all new areas, and you've created more garbage and waste and pollution, you've had to build out more infrastructure to accommodate them, more public transit suddenly there's no money at the end for the stated goal or purpose. So again, the problem comes back to these people aren't accountable first and foremost to actually achieving any of the goals they set out. And that's problem number one. But nobody has the time to police every single one of their legal representatives. And that gets back to our trust episode. We have to have professionals managing our shit and being able to trust them to do it. Yeah. The second part to it is that people taking advantage of the system, like those real estate companies who are only building luxury homes when they could be building entire regions of low-income housing and just fixing the problem outright.
I love my little house
because it's more profitable to do this other way. And then they're getting subsidies from the taxpayers who couldn't afford to help the homeless people, but they can afford to help luxury home builders. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And it's just this cascade of subsidies and tax relief and incentivizing the wrong people to fix a solution or a problem that's right in front of them.
Yeah.
Those home developers know how to build homes. They could build affordable homes, period. They just don't. And what we have to do as a tax base is require that they build X number of affordable homes for every luxury home they build.
Well, and that's one of the things I don't like. I'm not against the rich at all. Like,
no, neither am I.
And like, well, it's like, well, because one of the things that I saw in history was like one of the biggest booms in technology and the biggest booms in global wealth was when a couple guys went, what if I sold something to the poor? What if I made something that more people could buy? Because if you can sell something, and you look at Henry Ford and Thomas Edison, I don't care if you hate them or not, it doesn't matter. The business model ended up helping a lot of people. So you get something like, what if I made it so that I could record something and then play it back? You think of the phonograph or something like that. And he said, okay, but what if I made it cheap enough that instead of selling it to 1,000 people for $10,000, I could sell it to 1 million people for $100. 3 million people for $100, or 10 million people for $50. That's like an exponential amount of more money. And like the same thing with a car. Like the Model T, it's like, okay, cars were luxury items. You know, only the richest could buy a horseless carriage. Then the Model T came out and it's like, you now, instead of being able to sell it to a couple people who will give you a lot of money, you sell it to, an order of magnitude or to more than that, who for a little bit of money, you're making way more money, producing way more, employing more people because you're making more. And then those people have enough money to buy your, okay, this is capitalism 101. Good, free market. I'm not, okay, but like, this is, and so.
But here's the problem though, is because the economics don't always work with it, because like, the problem with affordable food, for example, you can make food cheaper if it's got more preservatives in it. So the more junk your food is, the cheaper it is for people to buy. Dipping
your meat in water so you can sell it at a heavier price, and everyone who tries to saute your meat ends up with a pool in their pan. And you're just like, ugh. You can't regulate it because it's just water. Like you can't but it's just the most infuriating act of, corporate greed. It's the most...
but the issue is, it's not it is greed if we talk about it from like an interpersonal standpoint. But the corporation itself by law is mandated to seek profit. We can't even fault the companies for doing this because we design the system that they're operating in.
Well, if they're not seeking profit, then
what are they doing?
Yeah. So then why have a company? So
why would I invest in your company if you're not even seeking a profit for me?
You don't want to make money? Okay, I'm going to go invest in that restaurant that's actually going to try.
Yeah. So most investors want to diversify their investments. They don't throw all their money into one company because that's stupid.
Yeah.
And if you're not throwing all your money into one company, you can't possibly check the moral ethic code and see that they're all following by their standards, because you're invested in 800 different companies in 80 different countries. Like, that's just not even realistic. It's not feasible.
I thought we were getting off topic, but this is actually a really good analogy, because if someone's making awareness at us,
that's really well put.
Then they want us to do something. Now, like I said, if my faucet's leaking, I can be aware of it, but I don't actually have to fix it. I feel like that's really deep, but that's as far as that idea goes. But if they're making awareness at me, then they are making a plea for my attention and my time, my effort, and my money. They want me to vote with that stuff for their thing. Now, if it's just awareness, they want me to say, have you heard about the new thing that's out that will help people with, some disease? Or they want me to, make a decision to go and volunteer a couple hours or do the run or, run for the cure or whatever. Or they want me to put my money up and my time and my, effort, and also help spread awareness. And the thing is that I don't have to. So I can say, no. I only have a certain amount of time. So I don't have to, every time someone raises awareness to me, I don't have to, I can say, no, I'm working on something else, or I'm helping in another spot. And that doesn't make me evil. It's like, oh, I don't care about cancer patients. Oh, how could you? It's like, because I'm caring about something else. Like, I'm one guy, and I know I'm one guy, but that doesn't mean I'm powerless. It means I only have two hands. If I
Yeah,
had
and
four
resources aren't infinite. Otherwise, you'd have solved these problems already.
Yeah, one guy would have been like, oh, well, we don't even have these problems because we're all infinite beings. But we're not. And so we can't just focus on one problem, because that would leave all the other problems, to fester. Oh, look, we solved poverty, and now we don't have any drinking water. And now all the nuclear reactors are exploding, but and all the dams burst, and Florida and California literally fell into the ocean. Oh man. But we solved poverty. Everyone's rich, and everyone has access to food. That's great.
Or in a more timely example, COVID kills all the poor people of the world because they didn't have access to a vaccine. As if we don't need poor people's labor to make our companies profitable. Like, it's that short-sightedness that makes that we should be raising awareness for, that we're not.
I was really worried about, I'm still kind of really, I'm not worried about Canada. No. When COVID hit, I was like, oh man, India.
Yeah, like we're so spread out. We got 36 million people in the biggest country in the world. Like,
yeah,
we're so spread out. It's really easy for us to make food, considering we export food as a primary resource.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking about like India or Africa. And I'm just like, please, someone like
Nigeria, where they don't believe, like, they have Boko Haram. Books are evil. Like, they have groups of terrorists who don't believe in intellectualism. Like, those places are at risk.
Yeah, and it's just like us who are like, well, okay, wear a mask. It's like, okay, I don't like it, but I'm gonna wear it. It's like, and everyone's like, that's your right. It's like cool. But like India, like, if you've seen the crowds at like rush hour, it's just like, that's a COVID petri dish, and I like, that's like, we don't, like, we can raise awareness for that, but like, I didn't need to be raised awareness for that. I heard about COVID and I was like, oh no.
But I had to learn about India on Al Jazeera and DW German news, because they're not reporting it in Canada. Like, that to me is shameful. Really, really shameful for an intelligent society like ours, where even our public school systems teach, university grade maths and physics and stuff. How we don't even have access to news of what's happening to hundreds of millions of people abroad.
This is
mind-boggling to me.
Interesting way to go, because news is essentially an awareness engine. And in North America, especially, and the UK, because honestly, we adopted you once your empire fell.
Yeah, we're all the same.
Yeah.
White guys all look alike.
Our news is very geared towards, like, our news is definitely not doing its job right now of making awareness. They're definitely trying to, every single channel is politically motivated. There's a couple like radical centrist ones who are actually pretending to do journalism in spite of everyone else. But right now it's a mess, and you're having to go to different sources. But this is also probably a result of the change in the medium. So the message is changing, because, as McLuhan would say, the medium's outdated. The news as we've known it doesn't make sense anymore, and therefore it's failing to do its job because the message has changed, and therefore the medium is insufficient for the message we want. What we're doing now is a better way of doing it. People are going to inherently gravitate towards the medium that better shows them the more effective message, which is why pamphlets worked better than town criers. Well, why would I go to a town crier when I could read, an opinion that's not just sanctioned by the king in a pamphlet on my own in a coffee shop, which was also another medium of communication that people didn't like. People are going to go and they're going to talk to people, and they're going to hate me, and they're going to cut off my head, and then I won't be king anymore.
But the tragic side effect is, even though this, like, what we're doing is more informative and engaged than what the news is doing, our production value is so low because we're volunteers, right? We're just two guys. We're not trained journalists with, like, HD cameras and satellite vans that can scoot around the city with Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, and I'm not a reporter at all. Like, we're not reporting.
And we don't ever claim to be either. We don't even claim to be well informed half the time.
Reporting is
But the point is, they're not serving their function. Their social function is to raise social awareness, not just of crime and stuff, but also of political agendas and how money is being spent, the transparency aspect. And they also advertise for nonprofit causes.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's one of the things that you saw that when I was a kid, the local shelter's having a food drive, come see or donate some cans. It's like, I got some cans I can throw at them. But now it's just like, I don't watch the news like that anymore. So I don't know about the canned food drive. And so the way I become aware of it is when I walk by my local shelter and they have a sign out saying like, donate your cans. I'll be like, oh, okay, that's where I can do it.
Or the boards up at churches, like on the lawns of churches.
Churches are often the best places to go for this, because the churches, even though they tend to be, have that kind of annoying Christian, sorry Dad, but Christians can kind of sometimes be a pain in the butt. But churches generally are places of help. And if you're looking for a place to help, go to a church.
And they're tapped into the community. Like if you're running a food drive and you see a church next door, you're going to walk into the church and say, hey, can you tell all of your congregation about this? Like, it's just an easier, more efficient way of
and if they're Catholic, they'll be like, for a donation. but
everybody else is fine though. Like you could even walk in, not just Christians, but like Buddhist temples. We've walked into Hindu temples before. Like, they're all welcoming and they're all engaged in trying to help humanity.
They shoved so much food in our face. They were just happy to see us. We're like, we don't know anything about your religion. We just showed up. And that was fun.
But they're there specifically to help with community engagement. Like that is their social function as churches. Like, if you just want to look at utilitarianism, that's the purpose of religion. It's to have communities and groups outside of work and school that people can get help at, that's not the government.
And it's interesting because the church used to be now this is gonna be like, I'm gonna join a church now, but I'm probably not. But the church before used to be the center of the community. So you have the political center of the community being like, I'm just saying, like in a town or in an old city. The political center was the noble and the nobility mansion or the manor, but the cultural center would have been the church. Everybody goes to church. It's the nexus of everyone. Everyone, like right now, we're reaching your mind, but we can't shake your hand, dear listener, and so this isn't a physical nexus. This is a mental nexus of information. Now, the thing is that if you have that physical connection, everyone can get together and you can actually say, hey, my friend's building a deck. We hear you're building a shed. I'll help you if you help me. And then what happens is, because you're physically there, it's easier to say, all right, let's do it. Like, I'll be at your place on Saturday. You come to my place on Sunday. And now, more hands make lighter work. And that's the kind of connection that happens. And
with a bigger pool, you also get more efficient help, because then the people who are good at carrying and bagging groceries can do that. And then the people of the congregation who are better at organizing and cataloging things can do that.
I think there's an upper limit. A mega church definitely, I don't think, serves that purpose as well. I think
every church has more than one person in it. So when you go to a group of more than one people, there's a much higher chance that you're going to get effective work out of those people, as opposed to just getting one person to do one job and hoping that they're a good fit for it. You know what I mean?
And I don't think we could ignore the spiritual, I hate using that word so much, the spiritual aspect of it, because they are coming together with something in common. It doesn't matter the skin color. You get like a bunch of, all of a sudden a new Asian family that moved in comes into the Catholic Church, and it doesn't matter because they're linked by their faith. They're linked by a common factor that allows that to happen. And all of a sudden they're part of the community. They have to integrate, like, everyone in grade 4 is equally in grade 4 together, and everyone's gonna pick at each other and see where everyone sits, but it's there. And I think that doesn't really translate well into the mega market of like something like the internet, because in the church, after you get past about 300 people, everyone's kind of like, who's that? But you get this small community, everyone's helping each other out in a small community. It's this, but like I said, with the mega church, after about like 100,000 people, it's not a community anymore.
It's a business.
It's a business, and the only thing that you can boil it down to is its basic premise, which is we're gonna go and praise Jesus, which is fine for them. But at the same time, the community aspect becomes a bit of a farce once it gets past about a couple tens of thousands.
But the function it serves, like with regard to raising awareness, you're still having crowds of people with all who are well intentioned. You're not getting crowds of like evil people or white supremacists, or well, I guess that could be a church if you want.
Yeah, Westboro Baptist Church.
But I mean, like, the intent is already there. People are willfully choosing to go somewhere to congregate to affect good in the world. So it's a really special place, especially for benevolent activities, to organize a grassroots movement. But that conversely juxtaposed against like a university group or activist groups in at work or something like that, what they're doing is they're doing it either for credit for the business because they get a pat on the back and an attaboy for raising X number of dollars from your peers, because then the company gets the tax write-off and you get a bonus on the side that's not included in the, but technically it comes from the donations, but no, they're just paying you a salary bonus for the good work you did raising money while they get a tax credit. Well,
as someone who used to run a student group, that's very accurate. Once we got off of the truth that we were just doing this to hang out with each other and because we enjoyed each other's company, and it was a good excuse to have bake sales and make Cold War cookies and have bombastic speeches and stuff like that. Like when we tried to be a advocacy group, it kind of got dumb. The only good thing we did with that was poll the student body to see what people would be interested in, to tell the faculty, it's like, here's what the students actually want to study in history. And
I don't want to suggest that it's not helpful at all, because it still is raising awareness.
I didn't feel very helpful.
The amount of effort being input into it is not generating the same output as the desired effect would want.
Oh, definitely. That's exactly descripting what I was doing with at the
so
head
it's not like it was useless at all. It wasn't wasted time or anything. Even after you get to the point where it's just rhetoric and pontificating, you're still technically raising awareness, and somebody might walk by who's never heard it before. You never know. But the point is, there are way more effective approaches to it. And one of the ways of doing that, as you mentioned before with the transparency, is looking at it economically and saying, like, how are our resources best served? And the best way to serve our resources economically is to have some type of regulation in place, not to say that the government has to have its fingers in everything we do, but anybody who listens to the channel knows I'm a bit of a socialist. And that just means that there needs to be regulation on the housing thing that we mentioned before. You should build affordable houses in addition to luxury homes. You can't just build a city out of luxury homes where there's going to be homeless people.
I think one of the things is that I'm kind of not a socialist. This is why you should watch this when we're interesting, and you should raise awareness with your friends, because look at us. Two sides.
Yeah, we're not yelling at each other, even though we disagree.
Anyway, we should put anime things on. Anyway,
yes.
But like on my side, I would say that like people building luxury homes is going to continue to cause housing bubbles to burst and
inflate, not just burst.
And I think we should be giving. I think one thing that would be helpful is if someone like a lobby group, which would persuade, which would put, like, I don't know, the small house lobby group, which would, every time someone came up with a proposal for a subdivision of smaller houses, big yards, like kind of like the one I've got. I'm not going to show you my house. Hey guys, let me just dox myself. But a smaller, affordable house with a reasonable space to it, and then you could have those pressure groups influence or help, not influence government, but maybe help the people making those proposals show that these smaller houses, though it's seemingly, you're not selling luxury homes, that it's actually a really good investment, and help them with their marketing, help them with their proposal, help them with their pitch.
Yeah, we should almost give them free advertising for that. Like, we should contribute back to the companies who are making low profit margin homes to say thanks for, like, helping clean up homelessness.
Okay, I got an idea though. You have that same organization, which could be raising awareness, but what they could be doing instead of just raising awareness is just doing the numbers, saying, here's the amount of people that have this amount of money. The greatest block of money of people looking for homes is this group. So if you build these types of houses like this, you probably will potentially sell them more effectively than these ones up here. And here's the range of profit that you would have. And then they could keep updating this, and it would act as, this might already be a thing. So it would show the reality of it, instead of, because a lot of these things is new homes, you can have your own mansion. They're selling us on a dream that isn't real. I don't have enough money to live in a mansion, a real mansion. And therefore, I probably don't have enough money to have a fake mansion in, a fake mansion area that doesn't actually have any retail or jobs around it. If you have to drive to your, where I live right now, I can walk, I can go apply on foot within 100 feet to businesses within 100 feet of me. If I live in one of these subdivisions, I couldn't. You'd have to drive out. If you're in Winnipeg, think of like Waverly West or Linden Woods. There's nowhere to work inside the subdivision. So,
but I'm not saying rich people shouldn't have nice stuff.
Oh no, hell no.
Saying that. We're just saying for every
aspiration.
For every 10 or 15 luxury homes that you build, you should build one affordable one.
Yeah, there's only going to be so many rich people, and they're going to move around because not everyone's rich all the time. And
the problem is with real estate, because if they're only making expensive homes, the prices of all homes goes up. So your problem gets worse.
And then the rest become tenements.
And then the only people who have money are people whose houses that they already owned inflated in value. So they trade their 10-year-old house for a brand new house. And all you're getting is the same pool of people buying the same houses. And they're all making prices go up. And then they're all benefiting from the prices rising. That's what a bubble is.
People coming in from China, like buying those houses like for like cash. And then, nobody can buy a house in Vancouver. We got accepted to a university in Vancouver. Guess where we didn't move? We would be living in a basement right now for twice the price that we pay for rent on this house.
Yeah, I paid more in rent for the smallest place I could get in Vancouver than they offer people on disability or EI in Winnipeg. You can't even have a place to sleep on a basic income or a fixed income, or as a senior or something who's just on old age security or something like that. It's insane because it's unnecessary. All they're doing is inflating the wealth of people based on mortgage debt, and mortgage debt is so secure that the bankers get to pay themselves in commissions based on percentages of the mortgages they sell. So everybody's getting paid out except for the only people who can't afford to buy in
when the whole goal is to sell houses and have people live in houses. That's it. That's the main point of all this.
Our social goal should be to have homes for people first. And then if you have a home already and you want to save up for a nicer one, then albeit, go to it. There's no reason we can't afford homes.
We're not going to give them to people. This is still economic. Well, anyway, I think when we boil it down, we can get into housing in another episode, but I think the crux of what we're talking about here is the truth. Mm-hmm. What awareness should be, and this is kind of going to be my take on it maybe, is that awareness should be something that portrays the truth that may not be immediately obvious, may be new, or it may be complicated. So, like I said, housing price, the housing market is very complicated. If you have an awareness group that gets together does all the math and puts together informative and up-to-date information, great. If you actually portray what cancer research is actually doing, the truth about it, that's great. If you are actually trying to tell us what's going on in the local neighborhood or something that's like brand new, that's good, as long as it's all true. And that's what we want as consumers of this information, is the truth, I would say.
But we don't want raising awareness to be a business. That shouldn't be. No. I mean, unless it's journalism, that is technically.
Well, because a business is inclined to. People need to eat, but at the same time,
they don't need to eat gold.
Yeah, like if you're doing, I don't know. Part of me is like, well, if you're working, you should get paid. Well, yes, and if you're working to get paid, then maybe you're looking, say, okay, there's a bright future for this. Like, you don't want to just be stagnant with your life, but at the same time, you're not doing, the goal of it isn't just to make money. Well, part of it is you're doing something that makes you money that benefits society. And the thing is that everyone thinks that the truth is not profitable.
Mm-hmm. That it's impossible to make money without being selfish about it. Like, you can still run a perfectly profitable business and do things that are socially conscious, and social responsibility and ethics is a huge part of any MBA program that you take in university.
Yeah.
But they walk out of the university and forget all about the ethics as soon as they leave the university.
Well, because it's easier to think of it as a zero-sum game. Now, I think zero-sum capitalism is ultimately self-destructive. You're digging yourself a hole.
Sustainable, flat out.
Because, like, I'm going to make a deal. Like, I make a deal every day I teach one of my students. And I'm transparent about this. It's like, your parents are paying me to make sure you learn, so I'm damn well going to do it. And I've said this to them, except without the word damn. And so, it's like, usually I'll say it when, like, your parents are paying me to teach you, so you better pay attention. When they're not paying attention, they're like, oh, okay. My parents are putting effort into this. So they're giving me money. I'm giving them my effort and time. They're getting a son or a daughter with a slightly better future than they had been had they not spent that hour engaging, and everyone's a winner. Well, they have less money now. It's like, yeah, but they have more value, and I have more value. And in fact, not only that, I'm a better teacher for having taught that extra hour. So everyone's winning from this. No one's losing.
And put more simply, it's like farmers. You want farmers to produce quality food because they're feeding the entire country. You also don't want farmers to go broke and lose their farms. You want them to be able to invest in their farms and buy new equipment and make up safety standards and yada, 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 right? So nobody's suggesting that a farmer shouldn't make money. But a farmer produces food for the entire country, which is obviously a huge social benefit. So why are people have such a difficulty understanding how capitalism could be socially conscious if we've got regulations on the price of wheat that they sell so that they don't price gouge? Because, people need food. Desperate people will pay anything for food. So you could just artificially restrict the supply of food and then raise the prices. But that wouldn't be good. So we got regulations against it. Farmers get paid. Farmers have enough to invest in their farms and buy new stuff and go on vacations, and they don't live poor. Our farmers are pretty rich.
For a good example of this, Simon Schama Citizens work on the French Revolution deals heavily with the price of bread and how it affected the French Revolution. Now the price of bread just went boop. The same thing happened in Weimar, Germany, where it's just like, how much for a price of bread? Well, this hour, it's 5 trillion marks. Next hour, it might be 17 million marks.
Yeah, so you better buy 2.
Yeah. It's like, oh, well, I'm going to need all of your money. Just throw it in the pile.
And that's a great example of that short-termism, where they'll see this immediate personal economic benefit to themselves at the expense and cost of society at large for years to come afterwards. And that's sort of what we're doing when we're raising awareness, trying to use trigger signals and bloody images or that really perverse type of gore. And I don't mean that literally, but I mean the shock-inducing type of raising awareness. That's just not necessary for cancer. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And you're thinking of cigarette labels and stuff like that.
Well, for everything, even breast cancer or colon cancer. Oh, if he would have got this checked, he wouldn't be looking like this right now.
And this. It's just it's like, but
I get what they're trying to do, but the more beneficial thing would be like, look how much money it costs to be sick and in pain, and look how we can help you prevent it from the future. Like, that's what their raising awareness should be, in my opinion. It should be like you said, true and informative and accurate, without sensationalizing or blowing things out of proportion, and without like making up some type of catastrophe that no one's ever heard of. You just say it straight out. Get breast cancer screenings, and then you save yourself pain and money. Like, it's that
Here's
simple.
where to go. Do it now. Like, make it an order. But one thing I don't like is that we say the word true like it's something that exists, and it's I can't really function in a world where, you know, truth, like something isn't something. Like, I'm here, I'm sitting here, this is true. There's no non-objective thing about this. But you can argue nowadays that anything, like, truth doesn't exist. You know, there's no absolute truth. So, you know, anything you say can be argued to be true. It's like, yeah, but it doesn't make it right. 2 + 2 is 4.
Okay, well, like, put it more practically, people should believe what they're saying is true.
Yes.
So whether they're right or wrong, doesn't matter. If they believe like their data was accurate and it's just not, at least they're trying to say something true. Well, but what I'm talking about with false statements is people knowingly picking and choosing which graphs and which charts and which data to use just so they can manipulate the figures.
Right. So if Cancer Society is saying one thing, and we can say, you know what, Cancer Society, you're shit. Oh, damn it. I censored the wrong word. I said the loud part quiet and the quiet part loud. Oh no.
That's
anyway,
funny.
Beep that out. It'll be funny. But you can't do it. Now, what happens is, how could you dare criticize the Cancer Society? They're fighting cancer. They're above reproach. And this is one thing we need to get over is in order to have truth, everyone has to be able to be a subject of criticism.
And we should encourage it. Because data can be verified. So we should always encourage skepticism, even if it's obviously true. Just let people check.
Yeah, and if someone says, "Well, no, you can't do that because it hurts my feelings," you shouldn't be criticizing that because they do so much good and it'll hurt the people with cancer. It's like, I'm sure that people with cancer have bigger problems than me, you know, criticizing the figures of the Cancer Society. And like, in all honesty, I'm not really worried about the feelings of someone I don't know enough to even know what their feelings are. So like, if you're just some Jane Doe or Joe Blow and you tell me that you're offended, well, that sucks for you. Pat in the back, I guess. But like, no, these figures are wrong. And it's not true. Your feelings don't inform facts. And the housing market's going to explode again and again. Cancer is going to get money, and we're still going to be no closer to a cure for a disease that is not even being presented as what it actually that doesn't reflect the actual nature of the disease itself. Like, it's an exponential growth, like, of unregulated growth of cells in the body. It's not something you catch. And we're just treating it like it's something we can just cure. No, it's something we have to like deal with, completely different than we're dealing with COVID. We can't treat it like we're going to find a cure. It's like, no, you have to treat it
and that's
as
like
what
a
it is.
dishonest way of marketing their research, right?
Right.
The research is there and it is useful and we can find treatments through it, but to say that we're going to cure it is just it's ignorant of physics and chemistry.
We can make sure people don't die from it, but they're at greater risk after we cure them of the cancer for the rest of their life. If we brought in our
But again, it doesn't address the actual problem though too. Like, the problem is they're raising awareness the wrong way. They're doing it by being knowingly dishonest about the thing they're trying to raise money for, in order to tear jerk people into giving them more money than they otherwise would. That's
and then in the end they create a distortion as to what cancer is. And then you get comments like, well, we can go to the moon, but we can't cure cancer. It's like, you've seen how complex cancer is? It's like, it's literal chaos in the body. The moon was just an engineering and mathematical problem.
Look at a list of them. If you just try and memorize all the different types of cancers, you could see how hard it would be to treat them all. Yeah.
And like the same goes for, and then that's just cancer. There's 37 diseases that you turn on the TV and they'll be like, donate to the, I can't even make one up. There's so many of them.
Oh, there's like diabetes, CNIB, there's like colitis and bowel dysfunction. There's autoimmune disorder, lupus. There's
Jumper's disease. I made that one up.
But there are so many of them. And I'm not saying at all, I'm not at all discouraging people from donating money. That's not at all what I'm trying to do here. What I'm trying to do, though, is if somebody has the willpower and desire to make a difference and they have some money to contribute, they could spend a few minutes figuring out where their money is going before donating. And then their money would be 5 times more effective. Like if you really, really want your money to go far, you can, by all means, if you have money and you don't have time, just donate. Some of that money will still help people. Well, I mean, we have laws in place to prevent things like siphoning.
If we think of it like an investment instead of a sacrifice, because I don't want to make a sacrifice. It's like, oh, open your veins for cancer research. It's like, I'll donate blood, but it's not a sacrifice. It's an investment of blood so that I'm not the only one left in society. Like, so because I know that, more hands make lighter work. If people just start dying, we lose their expertise. We lose their productivity. We also lose their personal ingenuity, their perspectives. Their
families are bereaved.
Like, people don't like it when, so if I donate some blood, I'm investing in a healthier society. And I know it sounds like, callous and cold, but it's the truth. I'm living in a better society if I give blood. And the other thing is, golden rule. I would want someone to do it for me. So I'm making an investment, and you need to think about it. What am I getting out of this? Well, you're getting peace of mind. I'm out the door. Like, no, that means give me your money for free so I can buy a Jaguar. It's like, no. And so that's kind of where I sit on this. So
one of the other ways, if I could move us towards like art and culture, because one of the other ways we raise awareness that's not as often as it used to be done is with like singers and musicians and what do they call it? Pop culture. That's what I was thinking.
The whole Band-Aid and stuff like that.
Yeah, like they used to have a hunger strike back in the 90s, or they had like concert tours and stuff. They had one for SARS, the first SARS.
The Berlin Wall concerts were a really
the
interesting
Berlin
one.
Concerts, yeah.
Like
Hands Across America was another one.
Yeah.
Anti-racism, I think that was.
Everything's anti-racist now.
Yeah, but before it was a thing. Raising awareness for racism meant something because they didn't have videos of George Floyd getting suffocated. Nobody cared until all of a sudden we got videos of it, and people are like surprised there's racism in the States, and like artists have been screaming it at the top of their lungs for decades.
Yeah.
The whole jazz movement, basically. You've got genres of music like hip hop and jazz and blues that stem directly from that type of oppression, and people were denying even existed.
It does bug me that everyone thinks that this is a new thing. It's worse now than ever before. It's like NWA in the 90s. Like,
but if you listen to the social gab these days, you'd think that LGBTQ rights were just as perverse or as necessary as the Black movement or Hispanic movements, and it's like they're not even close to the same type.
Every aggrieved group is they're vying with each other for, the attention of people, like us.
Yeah. And raising awareness, though, for their cause at the expense of another cause and not supporting each other is just banal. It's absolutely stupid that the LGBTQ people didn't get involved with all the Black rights for all these years.
Well, the feminists and the LGBT people are fighting now because the feminists are like, well, we're women, like women need equal rights in society, and now, but if you transition from a man to a woman, they're like, but you're not a woman, and now they're fighting with each other. So it's just like, well, that seems counterproductive. I'm gonna go look and see what's going on over here.
Yeah, and I'm gonna sound like a hippie, but they should all be supporting each other. White people should be supporting it, and Black people, and gay people, and lesbians, and trans. We should all be just supporting each other. Like there shouldn't be a fight for supremacy in the victim world. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but like you get Greta Thunberg coming in and saying, like, we need this. And I'm just like, I am against this. Not only am I not for this, I will actively work against her.
But like we had literally outright racist policies in government that designed cities, like red line districting and you know, things like that.
You got to,
they never had that in the LGBT thing.
What's it called?
So equating
residential
them,
schools.
putting them on the same level playing field to say that they're both equally oppressed is just nonsense. Like Black people and Hispanic people in the States have dealt with far more harm caused by their cause that they're still fighting and finally getting some awareness for, and they want to block them out because 0.1% of the population thinks that they're born in the wrong body.
Yeah,
and feel like their rights are being violated when they're
not.
One
thing
Our
I think
is already protecting their rights.
One thing I think awareness does is awareness sometimes has the effect of creating or exacerbating the problem to make it more real. So yeah, there are people that don't like gay people. Like, there's people that don't like you can, if there's something that exists, you can find someone that doesn't like it. You can find someone that's militantly against it. Generally, these people are, don't think things through too much. And so we can't just say, well, there's an epidemic of people that, well, there's always an epidemic of people that don't think, but maybe that's what you should be targeting, just the root problem, people not thinking. But
we're using words with their meanings.
Yeah, God forbid. No, because then you have to have truth, and then you can't justify your unjustified claims with feelings. And so we, like, a lot of times, like if a gay guy moves in, a gay couple moves in next door, everyone's going to be like, generally people are going to be like, oh, okay, I guess we're living next to a gay couple now. And no one, like, people move on with their lives, because generally people's lives are more important to themselves than, who's living next door. And if they are worked up about who or what type of people are moved in next door, that's usually a problem with the person that's committing the racism or homophobia or whatever, or gayism. I don't even want to call it homophobia. Who's afraid of gay people? Like, it's not a phobia, it's a ism. And
those gay priests who'd always talk about like how gay people shouldn't need to be fixed in those camps or whatever, those re-education camps. I think they're actually scared of gay people.
Yeah,
they are gay, like the self-loathing types.
Yeah, and
I think that's a mental condition, though. With that,
well, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Person
and that we're not. I think that, like, once, like, we in Canada here, we closed down the residential schools. We've gotten rid of it. We've been working towards, making this stuff available. If you're actually interested in it and don't want to just put up your Facebook tag, archives all over the country have information on the residential schools. Come to the Provincial Archives of Alberta,
and even the online database.
Look at the Oblate. Ask for the Oblate pictorial records, and you can see a lot of residential school records that the Oblates were working on. Go to the NCTR, or whatever they call it now. They changed it a couple times. The National Truth and Reconciliation place at the University of Manitoba in Winnipeg, which has a lot of online resources, a lot of oral histories relating to it. These things are available. And now here's what a lot of my professors are going to really dislike me to say: because they're available, it's not a problem anymore. We've moved beyond it. We need to help heal these people from their thing, but it's not an issue anymore. We're not committing that issue anymore. And no matter how much you tell me it's still an issue, it's not. What we need to do is help the people that suffered from it reintegrate themselves into themselves and society and their communities. We need to help them, not condemn the government for having done it, because the government has definitely moved away from these practices. If the government tried to do something, the entire country would overthrow them.
Yeah, overnight. We would not put up with it.
We wouldn't put up with it. And the fact that we let you talk about this stuff is testament to that. Like, it sounded like it was really aggressive, but and that to me is what it is. So I guess I'm raising awareness of the fact that these resources actually exist. It's like, heck yeah, I condemn residential schools, but I'm still critical of the movement that's calling for truth and reconciliation, because nobody's above criticism, period, including me.
Including the country we love. that we criticize constantly because we love it so much.
Watch our Canada Day special. We love Canada. It's definitely got problems, but you know, there are things we're celebrating, and I guess this. Yeah, go ahead.
That's sort of where I wanted to go with the pop culture things, because there are ways that musicians and actors and actresses can help, but they're also not the avatars of truth. What they're doing is using their popularity to spread a message that they think is important, like Leonardo DiCaprio with the palm oil, or like Elton John and Eminem doing a song. Eminem was like, I say the word faggot, but I don't mean it like that. And Elton John's like, I get that he doesn't mean it like that, and I'm gay, and it's cool. And everybody's okay with it. And suddenly you see this huge rift between like rappers and the gay community. Suddenly like, oh, it's not a big deal. I mean, there are still a bunch of homophobes in hip hop, and there's still a bunch of gay people who don't like the way rappers speak, but the tension is lessened because of the awareness raised by them doing public goods like that.
And I think you mentioned that word that we're not allowed to use anymore, and it made me think of that South Park episode where all the guys on the bikers from it's like, oh, you guys are being bags, and it's like no, it doesn't mean that anymore. Well, okay, yeah, it does mean that, but the thing that I'm thinking about is that South Park gets away with being like they raise awareness of all the issues, and then they pull all the issues down into the dirt on every side, and it pisses everyone off, but
they make it funny so that people can engage with it.
They're like, an equal opportunity offender. Yeah, and that almost does more to raise awareness than like a World Vision commercial. Hi, I'm a famous person. I'm a famous person that's, you know, hasn't gotten a job in, you know, 5 years, but I'm sure you remember me from that one show that no one remembers anymore. Please donate to this.
What movies was Charlize Theron in? I can't remember, but I remember a lot of commercials.
I remember Charlize Theron. Anyway, I'm married. But and this is, I think South Park's really interesting in this regard.
They're fascinating. We should do a whole episode just on South Park.
Yeah, and we should try and get them on.
Sociologically speaking, they actually look at things that need to be discussed, sort of like we're trying to do with our channel, and they talk about them just point blank and very à droite.
Yeah, and they intentionally drag it through the dirt, like
the last of the Mohicans.
Yeah,
that was just too funny.
Their COVID special is really interesting, but and I think what happens is because they are talking about these things in a very honest, but also, you know, humorous way, that we can almost trust them more because they are criticizing it. But at the end of the show, they always end up either being completely nihilistic about it, or they'll have presented both sides and say, you know, whatever, you're an individual, come up with your own decision. You're not watching South Park to learn which way to go. And like, if you look at something like The Simpsons now, which has definitely become politically partisan, to it's unwatchable now. And
it's pukey.
And they'll just be like, oh, this is great. And then they'll like have the characters do something or say something. It's just like, you're not being honest. You're just presenting one opinion, telling me it's good, and telling me to laugh. Whereas South Park is more, here are the issues. They're both stupid. Come up with your own thing. Why are you even taking us seriously? We tell poop jokes.
South Park presents the conflict itself. Like, they don't just bring up the issue just to have a topical thing to mention, just to have something to write about. They actually have structured episodes around the conflict itself. And I think that's what makes them so important, because in the process of laughing and watching and hearing people out, what you're doing is you're getting a background of characters and types of people. You know what I mean? Like, they use
my thing is Al Gore. They're in both shows. And in The Simpsons, he's just, I'm Al Gore. Now, in his first one, he was all like,
Man, Bear, Pig.
Well, in South Park, he was like, I'm super, like, he's not the serious character. It's like, I'm swear God, this Man Bear Pig, it's coming. It's like, because his inconvenient truth was like, the world's gonna be an ice ball, or it's gonna be global warming. It's gonna get us this boogity boo. I'm not gonna show you any stats. But in The Simpsons, he's definitely more of in the 90s, he was a punching bag, and there's that one scene. It's like, look, it's Al Gore, and it's just like, you are hearing me talk. It's just this boring guy, but he comes on again.
That was politics in the 90s. That's what it sounded like.
And he's definitely in there, but he's treated more sympathetically. And I think that is a very good representation of the two different dynamics of this, because one of them pokes fun, and I like how you said that it gets to the source of the conflict. And I just kind of lost my train of thought there.
I think it's important that they get to the conflict itself, though, because that's what makes people ruminate. Nobody's going to ruminate on just the mere mention of something that's controversial. They're just going to say, oh, that's that thing I keep hearing about that I don't want to talk about.
Well, if you give someone an answer,
mentioning the conflict, the thing that we dare not say when we're talking out in public or in front of people or in groups or at school or at work, like to say that which should not be said is important. That's what they do well. And what Simpsons doesn't do well is actually flesh out any conflict. All they do is draw the yellow version of a human being and just have them stand there and not do anything.
Yeah, and well, it's one of them asks the question. Well, one of them tells the approved answer. Here's the answer. Say this. This is what's approved by the politically correct at the current moment in the Lippmann public opinion style. But now when you give someone the conflict itself, they'll be forced to think about, well, when you force someone to make their own opinion by showing them the conflict and making them say, okay, this is one side, it's stupid. Here's the other side, it's also got its stupid stuff. Come up with your own. And it forces them to form their own opinion and say, I think this. And then what's hard about that is that someone else is going to come up with another opinion, and all of a sudden you have to have a conversation. You know, all that thing that these kids coming out of university want to have. We have to start a conversation. Well, if people have opinions, you have to. You can't just say, oh, I believe in this. Oh, I also believe in this. And then everyone pats each other in the back.
Yeah. A conversation means it has to be uncomfortable every now and then. In order for there to be free speech, people have to have opinions other than your own. If you want to be a unique individual flower and snowflake and, you know, special in your own life, you have to accept the fact that there are other people who are going to think different. And that means you have to hear it. You can't just have conversations with yourself and then pat yourself on the back for being open. And I think that's what we're missing a lot in our social and political discourse. When we're banning speakers from universities and schools, and when we're teaching and grading people on prescribed beliefs rather than thought out, fleshed out ideas, like when we're not having conversations that are controversial because we're too scared, or we self-censor ourselves because, you know, we might slip on camera and somebody might notice that we're human or have a bad idea here or there. Like, that type of fear and self-censorship, it does the opposite of what raising awareness is supposed to be. It does the opposite of making people more aware. And when we're raising awareness just for the tax credit or for the glory, or if we're doing it just to help ourselves sleep at night and feel better as people, it's not to say that those efforts are wasted or useless or worth nothing. But anybody who's got the intention and the drive and desire to make their lives more meaningful than they are currently should be able to invest a few minutes to understand what they're donating to, where they're donating their money, where the greatest need is, and maybe even go lobby to their city councilors and say, like, hey, why isn't there more low income housing if we've got a homelessness issue and we've got all these new developments being built? Like, we should be holding people accountable to do their jobs. And we need to do that in the proper way. And that takes some education. It means you have to read up on like how cities work, and, you know, civics classes are hard. They're boring. But that's how civilized society works. And I can't remember who the quote is, but there was a quote from somebody saying that you can judge a civilization based on its, on how it treats its prisoners, something to that effect. I think another way for a high-functioning society to judge itself is based on how it spends its tax money. How we set our budgets is really important. Biden said something like that too, actually, when he was campaigning. He said, show me your budget and I'll tell you what you value. Don't tell me what you value. Because they're just going to say, oh, I value equality and peace and blah, blah, blah. But all their money is going into like war and extortion and pillaging. And you know what I mean?
The quote was, "The degree of civilization in a society can be judged by entering its prisons," and that was Fyodor Dostoevsky.
Oh,
and
quote on him already.
I think what you said there is actually a really good summation of what we're talking about, and it's a good place to end on.
Even though we neglected a couple things, we might have to come back to this another day.
Yeah, I'm turning, my brain's turning into a bowl of oatmeal again.
Porridge.
Porridge. So, I don't really have anything much more to say. What you said there was actually nice.
Well, if you'll indulge me, I'm just going to make a couple final thoughts then.
Okay.
One is on mental health. The point of raising awareness for mental health isn't just to raise money. It's really important to recognize that people who harm you out in your day-to-day life or in public might have mental health problems, and they're not at all intentionally trying to cause harm or hurt you. And it's not an excuse for their actions. It doesn't excuse or absolve them of any culpability for being, you know, generally asocial or antisocial in their behavior, but it's an explanation, so it should be less harmful, sort of like we talked about in the meanings episode. The other thing I wanted to mention was about disaster relief. And since the Hurricane Katrina was the first time I ever noticed that it was a really big problem, but FEMA not acting when a Black neighborhood was flooded, it's just traumatized me. And I worked for Salvation Army's call center, and the way that they manage their money and their funding and all of their donations, and the way the CEOs walked around the city in first class, everything, and tuxedos, it was appalling. The World Trade Center before that was Red Cross giving all this money to companies in the buildings and not at all helping the firefighters and police officers and their families. At first, like huge chunks of the money that was donated to Red Cross went towards helping businesses rebuild. Like from an office, the lowest cost margin you could possibly have in the most expensive city in the world. Like, those people weren't struggling to pay rent in the World Trade Center. And instead of helping people, they were helping businesses.
You get someone like, was it Jon Stewart recently, who went on that campaign to help the rescuers who have been dealing with like COPD and all the dust inhalation, that they haven't had any help since 9/11. And he had like this is actually a good example of a good campaign, where he said, this is the problem. Here's what I need. I've got the clout, which is why I'm here. And I believe in it. And that I'm using my clout. Like, it's very transparent about it. It's like, I'm famous. Yeah. I can do this. This is what I believe in. And it was actually quite commendable of him, because he actually got it done. And he's helped a lot of people with that. Similarly,
I'd really like to encourage that, because that type of behavior is benevolence.
Well, I'm not famous though. What can I do? I don't have that kind of clout. Well, you have other things that you can do. Like, we all have a talent. He had fame and a name. We all have something, even if it's just two hands.
And that's where being part of the community, or just talking to like community leaders, like community centers or churches, even if you're not members of them, you can go there and talk to the people in the office that organize the churches and the community centers. And you can ask them, like, can I help clear snow on the rink so the kids have somewhere to play instead of going off doing drugs and breaking into cars? Like, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to get noticed to do something good. And you don't need a tax credit to be good either.
Or it could be like a Disney movie and you just go over and be like, you saw you doing drugs. Guess what you're doing? You're playing on my hockey team now. This is not a choice. It's like, oh.
But yeah, that's my little rant, because I just wanted to make sure we mentioned it, because it was so important, even though we're not doing it any justice by giving it the time of day. But disaster relief causes and health problems, totally worth raising awareness for.
Yeah.
But the right way. Don't do it wrong. Actually think about what you're doing and the objectives and the goals, and make sure that like your actions and behaviors are conducive towards getting you to those goals and objectives, and not just like making somebody rich.
Yeah. As small as you are, your actions matter.
That's right.
So, thanks for watching, guys. There may be a follow-up episode to this, so stay tuned. If you have any comments, we would love to hear them, good or bad. They'll probably be deleted if you put like, visit my website. But other than that, we'll be happy to hear from you.
Like, share, and subscribe. It's the best way to support free content. It's just to spread the word on it.
Raise awareness.
Raise awareness for Frivolous Gravitas.
See you guys.
Ciao.